Hi, I'm Rebecca Mander, and you are listening to the Bounce Mindset podcast. During my time as a busy mum and managing director in 2007, I managed significant personal loss and professional challenges as the only woman on the board. I believe we always have a choice, and that a resilient and what I call a bounce mindset is possible for anyone to develop. Join me as we meet some incredible guests, sharing their bounce forward stories, including my own in episode 1. I'm so excited to have you here, and also would like to thank Grow Radio Production and Stephen Bedell for Dragonfly, my very own theme tune. Enjoy. Hi there and welcome. I'm so excited to be here today on my very first podcast. And oh my goodness, I never thought I'd be here. Loads of people asked me to do podcasts and I said no. But I'm so excited. I've already interviewed some amazing people. And today I have an amazing person interviewing me, which is super exciting. Sandra Garlick is the founder of the Woman Who Awards, and she is just phenomenal. And it is her that made me tell my story in the very first place. So it was only fitting that she should be here on our first podcast, helping me share my story. Thank you so much, Sandra.
I'm absolutely delighted to be here and so excited and so privileged that you've asked me to be here on your very first launch episode. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, Rebecca, I'm going to ask you some questions on your very own first launch podcast. So tell us what you do now. Just tell the audience exactly what you do.
So right now, I'm an executive coach and founder of Guru You Coaching. We have an amazing program, the Bounce program, which helps people move from A to B in their career and actually gets 1 in 3 people promoted. So we're really excited about that at the moment. And it's a busy time, for businesses. So I'm working mostly in the legal and financial sectors, supporting leaders with their work. But my niche is supporting senior leaders through personal setback. And thankfully, especially, since we're a few years on from COVID, a lot of my work is now not doing that. So that's probably 5% of my work. The rest of the work is working with associates to help teams work more effectively, leaders to be more compassionate, to be better listeners, to be better delegators. And yeah, I just love my job. It's just so many worlds away from what I was doing 10 years ago. So I'm very happy as an executive coach, definitely.
Fantastic. And it's interesting, actually, because a leader isn't always a person at the head of a big organization. A leader can be a leader of any team or a leader of their own business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We lead our children. We lead so many times in our lives. It doesn't have to be, the archetypal leader that we're talking about. And quite often the course that we do, one of our clients we do is mostly middle management or people who are just wanting to lead themselves in their career. They might not have anyone in their team, but it's helping people just lead themselves and lead others in the very best way they can by getting out of their own way. Sometimes leaders do that, don't they? You find leaders just their objectives, what they want, what they're dictating gets in the way of good leadership. And we're a bit the same as human beings. Sometimes we stop ourselves because we're, not leading effectively. So, yes.
Now, I want to talk all about your story, and I love the way that we met. And we met at the NatWest Accelerator many years ago, pre-COVID. And you're back in there now, mentoring, as am I.
Yes.
Fantastic. And what struck me the most was when you stood up and shared just a snippet of your story, and it absolutely blew me away and bowled me over. And I don't know whether you recall, but I sort of said, we've got to have a chat, we've got to have a coffee. And the next minute I had you speaking and sharing your story on one of my stages. Now, your story is amazing in several respects, but it clearly demonstrates how you've gone from victim to victor, which is exactly how you work with your clients. And I think the most important thing is you've got the lived experience, which is the key element when somebody is working in executive coaching. Take us back and tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I love the way you put that, Sandra. Thank you so much. The story started in 2007. I was a sales director of a large electronics company. And we had my husband, Craig, and we had Joshua, who was 4, and Charlie, who was 1.5. And I worked for a doorbell company.
I go ding dong when I hear that.
No. And yeah, it wasn't the most exciting career, I have to say. I'd rather been selling shoes and handbags. But yes, and we'd had a really particularly bad day with one of our clients called Betterware. I don't know if you remember that catalogue company. And so I went to, we decided to go out for a meal. And when we came back from our meal, Charlie was up with the babysitter. He'd got a cold, and we'd taken him to the doctors that day, and they just said, give him Calpol and pop him to bed. So I gave him a cuddle, I gave him a bottle, I said goodbye to the babysitter, put Charlie down in his cot, and we went down to watch the end of Jonathan Ross. And when we came back, we checked in on the children, as you do before you go to bed. And Joshua was there with his little Power Ranger in his fist. And I went in to check on Charlie, and Charlie was not okay. Charlie was face down in his cot. And when I turned him over, he was blue. And a part of his face was blue, that is. And I just grabbed him, and thinking that Craig would tell me I was being really dramatic, because I just naturally am a drama queen, went in, and we couldn't even dial the number. We couldn't remember the number to dial for the ambulance. It obviously took milliseconds, but it felt like eternity. We're trying to think about that one number that you have to dial 3 times. And when they came very quickly, we lived near the hospital at Warwick, and they came very quickly. They shot up the stairs, grabbed Charlie, flew down the stairs into the ambulance. Craig followed. We got a neighbour to look after Joshua. Craig followed, calling my mum and dad, my poor parents, and my brother and his wife, calling them to say, you need to come home because we think Charlie might be dying. And we went in the ambulance, and I remember praying in the ambulance, and I'm quite, I have a faith, and I really believed that if I believed strongly enough, if my faith was strong enough, that in the newspapers the next day there would be an article. I remember thinking this at the time, this is going to be in the newspapers because this baby is going to be saved by prayers. And so we got to the hospital, and nothing looked good. And there was a whole heap, a host of people around this tiny baby on a big bed trying to work on him. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, this has been a long time now that he's not been breathing. What will happen, for him if he does come around? And I remember I was on my knees again, just praying for a miracle. And the priest came, because we're Catholics. The priest came. I thought, that's it. The priest's here. It's all fine. And yeah, on the 31st of March, 2007, that miracle, as we wanted it to look, did not happen. And we lost Charlie on that day. And yeah, that's not my story, but that's probably the biggest part. And I share that story because I remember in that hospital just thinking my life is over. And we went back to the house, and it was just horrible. And I remember thinking my life is completely over. I'm never going to laugh again. I'm never going to smile again. I won't be the center of attention. I love doing a Tina Turner impression. I just thought that is just done. That's never. And, having to tell Joshua the next day that his brother had died was just that my heart broke twice in 24 hours because that was horrible. And over the next few weeks, I thought, well, I don't want my life to never be the same again. And I remembered two women I knew who'd lost children. And I can only describe, now their situation was different. So it's incomparable. Every situation is different. But for me, what I saw were two lovely women who were existing. They were just barely surviving and doing the do, day in, day out, just like walking, talking shells. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is my future. That is me in 10 years' time if I don't do something now. And I didn't know how the hell I was going to do it. I always tell my audience, it was like someone had said, Rebecca, here's a mountain, go and climb it, and there's a pair of flip-flops to do it in. I hadn't got a clue how to do it. But I knew it had to be done. And so my brother calls me his bossy big sister, but I call myself the queen of delegation. And so I do believe girls shouldn't be told they're bossy when they're growing up, should they? Because we get things done. And so I thought, right, I can't do this on my own. I need something other than a pair of flip-flops to climb this mountain. I need a psychologist. And a woman I knew recommended someone to me. I was really cross with the police because of the way they had done something on the night. They turned up a lot of police people. And I had thought, and they'd mentioned the SOCO. And I said, what does SOCO mean? They said, scene of crime. And I was just mortified. So I also wanted to speak to the pathologist who'd done Charlie's post-mortem. And that was because I thought, because I'd put him down with his bottle, he must have choked. And as a parent, you think, gosh, it must be my fault. I had one job and I failed. So after a conversation, these are all choices. We talk about choices that we make, and you can't change what happens to you, but you can change how you respond to it. And I knew it wasn't normal to speak to the pathologist, but I also knew that in 10 years' time, if I'm barely surviving because of my guilt that I've had, because I thought I was responsible, that pathologist won't know me in 10 years' time. He won't remember me, and he might not even be alive, bless him. So I'm going to ask him now. And right now, I was being a bit manipulative because I was thinking, well, he will have just done a post-mortem on a child. He'll want to be able to help the mother. And so all of these things are going through my mind. I sound like a psychopath, don't I? But I needed to have that conversation. And it was brilliant. And Craig said, you can't ask him all those questions. I said, I can. And I did. And I knew without a shadow of doubt, because Charlie had died of pneumococcal septicemia. And he would not have survived even in the hospital. Even if I'd had him in the hospital in my arms, he wouldn't have survived because it was blood poisoning. And with the police, when I spoke to the police, I knew that another family, they wouldn't make that mistake again. They would be more sensitive next time. And the psychologist, her name is Kirsty Mackenzie McCarg, and I have to say her name because if it wasn't for her, I'm not sure I would be I might not even be doing this job, because I learned about psychology and I learned it's far more fascinating than doorbells. So through that, she looked after me for every week. And it was on the NHS. And I have to say that because I think they're amazing. And, every week she met me and held me and took me, didn't hold me, but metaphorically speaking, held that space for me. And we made it. We became, we had a fabulous network of people. I asked for help. I wasn't afraid to ask for help. I wasn't afraid to tell my team if I was going to be sad one day, I would say, look, just, I'm okay, but just leave me today. I'll come down if I need anything. But, I would be honest, as honest as I could be without looking like I was falling apart. But, trying to be authentic, really, I think made it a lot easier, took the pressure off. And so Craig and I survived our marriage. We're 25 years actually last month at the time of going to recording. But yeah, we had a year after Charlie was born, after Charlie died, Ruby was born. So we had a beautiful baby girl, and they said to us, her due date is the 17th of March. can you believe it? The same day that Charlie passed away. And I just thought, well, someone has got a really sick sense of humor. Sorry, the 31st of March. Yeah. Sorry. And so we brought her due date forward. Because again, we had a choice. Always there's a choice in there somewhere. So that's my personal story. My professional one sort of follows the same theme, but I feel like I need to take a breath, give you a chance to ask a question.
You talked there. I mean, there's a couple of things you said there. You talked about, somebody held the space for you, and I think and you weren't afraid to ask for help, and I think that is key, because you could have become one of those women that you'd seen, but something in you said, no, I'm not going to be the victim here. Do you think that was a strong mindset, or do you think it was because that psychologist held that space and guided you?
I think it's definitely it wasn't the psychologist, because I had to reach out to the psychologist. So once I did, it was the mindset that made me go and find her. Once I had that safe space, that's when I could do all the work that I couldn't, she could do all the work that I couldn't do on my own. But I think that moment where I thought, right, who on earth can it was almost like a list, what I didn't do a list, but you're really thinking, right, what isn't covered? What isn't covered? Checking that, our marriage is covered. How are we going to sort that out? How's Joshua's well-being going to be? How will I cope at work? All these different things, making sure I got them all covered. And I think that comes from a mindset. But I also, and I wonder, I'm going to study this, because I do wonder what makes one mindset bounce and what makes the other one go backwards. And I've spoken to people on the podcast who have not had the family support that I have had, and didn't have that love and that strong sense of self-esteem given to them by the people around them. And yet they still had that desire to not be the victim. And so I'm really going to look into that, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. And, I wonder whether that losing Charlie, maybe because you lost your mum as well.
Yeah.
Losing Charlie is one thing, but then losing your mum and having been thrown really into that leadership role at the business, and having to do all that and take all that on board, you barely had time to catch your breath.
I didn't. I had no time to catch my breath. And I think that was just part of the problem. I was asked to become managing director. So a year after we lost Charlie, we were celebrating Ruby's christening. Well, it was 13 months later. We were celebrating Ruby's christening. And a few days later, my mum was, died in a car accident, that she was in a car accident with my dad. And then they asked me to become managing director a few months after that. So I was returning from maternity leave and being asked to be managing director. So I was grieving Charlie, grieving my mum, who literally was my very best friend. I mean, if she could see me now doing a podcast, honestly, she'd be so proud. And she was just the most wonderful woman in the world. And so when I lost her, I literally thought, what the hell? Who, how on earth? She was going to be my mentor in the business. And then we lost one of our clients, a very large client, and we had the economic downturn. So we were in a very dire situation in the workplace, and the company that my mum had sold to for millions were now turning around to me and saying, Rebecca, what on earth is happening? But I knew it was a bit like that mountain again. I knew I needed better flip-flops. And so I did the same. I delegated. I had an amazing team of people. I delegated to them. I recruited a very good salesperson. My brother went out and had a game of golf with the buyer at this very large company. My finance head is rubbish. It's awful. When I tell people I work with banks, they probably think, really? Hopefully. But yeah, so Craig was my right-hand person in finance, all matters of finance. I just filled the gaps that I didn't have with amazing people who did. And we made it work. And within a few years, we built the company back up. And from making 28% redundancies in 2008, when I left, we were turning over 14 million pounds, which is a lot of doorbells.
Yeah.
And it was, a great place to be and a great place to work. So yeah, I learned the lessons I learned in life supported me in my professional role as well.
Yeah,
And
I think not only the lived experience through losing Charlie and your mum, but the fact that you held that leadership role, so you can identify with leaders. You can see exactly how you can take them from setback.
Yes.
Take them forward.
Yes, exactly.
That is key, and I really believe in that lived experience. And you epitomise that absolutely in everything you do.
Oh, thank you.
Go on, Rebecca.
No, it's lovely work to do. It's really lovely work to do, and it's nice. I wish I'd had someone who could come into my office and understand what was going on personally and allow me to talk about my personal life, as well as saying, okay, so what are the stakeholders, what are the shareholders wanting from you this month, and what do you need to deliver, and what's going to get in the way of that, and how can you bounce forward in your professional role? Are you looking after yourself? Telling me that it would be okay to take a day off, that sort of thing would have been wonderful. So when I'm doing that kind of work, it is very powerful for me as well as for the other person, I guess.
And you made that decision that you wanted fun in your life, you wanted a smile, and apart from doing your Tina Turner impersonations, and I've seen you going to concerts with your daughter, was it Taylor Swift?
Yes, we did.
So you do have fun in your life, you don't wallow in this, you haven't made yourself the victim, and I think that's amazing that you've done that, and you've used your experience to take things forward and trained as an executive coach. You didn't just decide one day, I'm going to do this. You went to university and did it.
I did. I went to work at university and did the Centre of Lifelong Learning. I did a diploma there. And then followed that up with lots of little programs on I love CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. I find that really fascinating. So I've done work with that. So yes, I became a fellow of the Institute of Leadership and Management. That was a really big mum would be proud of me moment when I got that.
Let's talk about the dragonfly and also Charlie's star. So they were born from Charlie, and it's his legacy.
Yeah, I know, little Charlie. So many legacies, and he has helped so many people. Charlie's star was created for you, actually, Sandra.
Oh, because so special now.
Yeah, you are. When you asked me to talk to an audience of 350, I think it was, I remember thinking, okay, I'm happy to do that. I'm delighted to do that. It's wonderful. But I think everyone has a story. And I think when you tell a story of how you've gone from victim to victor, or you've done something quite incredible, you can't just be seen as the only one who's done it. And you don't want people to think, well, yes, you did it, but I don't think I could do it. I don't want to someone listening saying, yeah, I can't really get through this awful breakup I'm having at the moment. The divorce settlements, it was just hideous. Look at the way you've done it. You're amazing. I wish I could be like you, but I'm not. So it's not going to be for me. That's what I didn't want. I wanted people to have something to take away, to go away with. And when they had a big decision to make, or needed a boost of confidence, or wanted a coach in their corner, they could have it. So I created Charlie's Star. And it's a 5-point coaching model, and it takes you through various different perspectives to help you think about the challenge that you're facing, or the question, the decision you have to make. So you sit with it with a cup of tea or a glass of wine, whatever it is you like. You just sit in the corner and work your way through it. And it's got all the questions. And yes, it's really a really lovely piece of work that we do with clients. And we take it now into very professional settings, as a team. What's your challenge? How are you going to work through this challenge? And we look at there's 5 points. There's the admirer, who values you, who looks up to you, who admires you, who thinks you're absolutely brilliant at what you do. what would they say? Why do they value you? What strengths do they see in you? And then we have the inspirer. That's who inspires you. So it could be someone famous, someone past, present. It could be your mum. For me, it's my mum. And, what would they do in your situation? What would they do? And I have many different inspirers all the time, thinking, what would they do? Those are your inspirers. And then you have the firer. That's the Lord Sugar, the worst that can happen. And that is if you don't move forward. So my worst that could happen would be Joshua would be a 14-year-old boy telling a counsellor his life had never been the same since he lost his brother. And the worst that could happen, that was the worst that could happen if I didn't do anything. If I did do something and step forward and be brave, the worst that could happen would be we wouldn't make it as a family. But at least I would have known I'd tried. And then we have the hirer, and that's the best that can happen. So the best that could happen if I did nothing was that Joshua and me and Craig would be okay, but we probably wouldn't be happy. We would, the best that could happen if we didn't have all that support would probably be that we'd just all stick together and be free shells, maybe. And the best that could happen if we did move forward and we did take the, more difficult route would be that we would be a happy family. And that's exactly what we've got today. Just absolutely, and I share a picture of the four of us when I tell this story, because I like people to see that, we're a really thriving, happy family that, as you say, make the most of everything and live life to the full. And then you have your inquirer. And I think this is really important, inquirer. You're one of my inquirers. So who do you need, or what do you need in order to help you move forward? And I remember when I was thinking about doing a podcast and we were having that lovely gin and tonic in our village. And I remember you are, so it's always, who do you need to speak to? So my psychologist, the pathologist, the police, who is it that's going to help you move forward? Who's going to be your mentor? We need to have mentors in our life. We need to ask for help. Sometimes we don't because we think people are too busy, but actually people are just so honored when you ask them for their help. When you reach out, they might say no because they're busy, but they're not going to say no because I think you're an idiot. You shouldn't be asking me. They'll say no, not yet, or I'd love to help, but can it be next month? But having that, I'm a mentor now to various different people, and I love it when people reach out. If I've got time, I will help. So the inquirer is the final piece of the star, and then you create your action based on those. And I've whistled through that'll probably make no sense to anybody, but that's the star.
It does. It gives a great insight and a great reminder for me as well, because it's been a while since I've looked at Charlie's star. And the dragonfly. I mean, you proudly wear the dragonfly for anyone that's watching this, but tell us about the dragonfly and how that's symbolic.
Oh, that's really, yes. The dragonfly. When Charlie died, I read a story to Joshua, and it was called The Dragonfly Story. And it was to explain where people go when they die. And it's a beautiful story about a water bug who decides they're going to climb the lily stem, and they wake up at the top of the lily stem, and no one wants them to go because they have a lovely life in the riverbed. But this little bug decides to go and promises to tell everybody what's up there that's so good. Why do their friends keep disappearing and not coming back? So they get to the little bug, gets to the top of the lily stem, falls asleep on the leaf, and then wakes up with these beautiful wings and can see sky and sunshine and birds and butterflies and flowers, and just thinks, oh my goodness, this is literally fabulous. And then remembers his promise to go down and tell everybody what's up there. And of course, when the dragonfly does that, he can't because of his beautiful wings. He swoops down to the water and can't go down because of his beautiful wings. And all of the other bugs that are now dragonflies are up there saying, don't worry, they'll come up soon. Come enjoy this with us. And it's a lovely story. And I was telling Joshua this, and that Charlie was a dragonfly. And we were sat in this, I was telling a friend this story, and we were sat in the centre of Warwick. And Warwick is in the middle of the country. There is a river, but it's nowhere near where we were sat. Absolutely not. We were in the town centre. And this bright blue dragonfly, as I was telling my friend this story, landed on our coffee table.
Wow.
And I just could not believe it. And the dragonfly flew around and it kept going off and coming back and settling on our table. And it was just the most fabulous moment. So when I created the logo, I said to my brother who designed it for me, I need it to be a dragonfly. And I Googled a beautiful story of the motivational reasons behind the dragonfly story. And that is lovely. And so I share that with my audience quite often about the dragonfly with a different ending than the one that I've just explained to you. But that's why the dragonfly is so important.
How often do you have a podcast where you get a story as well? It's a childhood story.
A childhood story, yeah. Bedtime story for everybody.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. What's next, Rebecca? What's next on the horizon? What have you got coming up?
Well, the most exciting thing for me at the moment is the podcast, but of course, everybody already knows about that. So that's really exciting. We've got the program that we deliver in-house, in corporate. We are bringing out to everybody I'm thinking 2025, early 2025. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to give everybody access to those mindset tools and techniques that they want and they need to move through their career or their business. So that's really super exciting. We have a lovely Facebook group where everyone comes on and joins in and gives we give loads of support to everybody. And so, yes, those things are really quite exciting. And then next year, actually, January in 2025 will be my 10th year of business. So that's really exciting. So, yeah, lots of exciting things happening.
And plus lots of exciting guests coming up on the podcast as well.
Oh, my goodness. The guests blow my mind. They are amazing. And they are all different versions of an inspirational story. They are all, you're going to listen to the stories and think, wow, if they can do that, I can definitely chair that meeting, or I can definitely make that decision about this relationship. I can definitely, because they are all incredible stories of how people have overcome adversity, how they've moved from what could have been a victim space to a real victor mindset, I call it the bounce mindset. It's that ability to bounce. And my friend said it's like a tennis, when tennis players, they bounce the ball a few times before they hit that brilliant shot. And that's what you'll hear in all of the stories that we will be sharing with you, because that's so important and so inspirational. So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
So before we finish, Rebecca, is there anything else your listeners need to know about you?
Oh my goodness. I think I've told them everything. They know I embarrassed myself down the pub doing a Tina Turner impression. They know why the dragonfly. What else? Oh, they need to know that I don't always get it right. So they need to forgive me for all the ums and the ahs. I know Gary will get rid of those, my editor. But yeah, my vocabulary sometimes, I'm 50 years old. What can I tell you? Menopause is real, and so they have to forgive that lack of polish that they may get from other executive coaches.
I love your honesty, and I'm sure your clients love it too. Rebecca, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to your story. This is your podcast, and only you can close it, not me.
Oh, Sandra, do you know what? I feel like a true friend has been with me on this journey, and it's so lovely to have you here. I can't think of anyone better I'd rather have shared this moment with, and I truly mean that. So yes, I look forward to your listeners, my listeners, all listening to us and just having a great time. Thank you so much for joining me today, Sandra. You've been amazing.
You're welcome.